This episode contains descriptions of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Margaret. Margaret E.B. was born in 1931. By the age of 44, she was already a widow. Her husband, Stuart, died of a heart attack in 1975. The loss didn't break her. She earned a Ph.D. in musicology from the University of Michigan, became a dean at the University of Northern Iowa, and in 1981 returned to Michigan as provost of the University of Michigan's Flint campus. She also hosted a classical music radio station and served as a lay minister. Margaret lived in the gatehouse of the Mott Estate, a sprawling cultural center in Flint. She was a vivid, sometimes difficult personality, a perfectionist who was beloved by her friends and resented by her colleagues. She was eventually fired from her provost position, but thanks to her tenured status, she remained on the faculty regardless. In the months before the tragedy, there were signs that something was wrong. One night, her daughter came home at 3 a.m. and found the house in disarray. Dresser drawers had been rifled through. Then in October 1986, Margaret woke in the middle of the night to find a strange man standing in her bedroom. She screamed, and he fled. On the evening of November 7, 1986, Margaret had dinner with 3 friends, William, John, and Soden. Around 11 o'clock, they drove her home and walked her to the front door like gentlemen. The front key didn't work, so they went around to the side entrance. She went inside. They said goodnight and made plans to return Sunday at 4 to dig up her tulip bulbs and take them home. That was the last time anyone saw Margaret alive. The next morning, she was supposed to pick up her 3-year-old granddaughter Jessie in Detroit and take her to the Detroit Institute of Arts. She never showed. Her daughter Lynn wasn't too worried. Her mother always had 5 things going at once, and might have simply forgotten. On Sunday at exactly 4:08 p.m., John and Soden arrived at the gatehouse. The front door was ajar. They knocked, no answer. They went inside. Margaret's keys were on the table. When John went upstairs, he saw her body through the open bedroom door. Police found that every window and door in the house was secured with deadbolts, except the front door. The bathroom was clean, with a single drop of blood near the sink. A jackknife lay there as well, with a partial fingerprint on it. That print would later become the key to the entire case. Margaret had been killed the same night she came home from dinner. The medical examiner determined this based on undigested vegetables from the Friday meal. Death had not come quickly. The killer had taken his time. Evidence pointed to torture, restraint, and rape. The body had been deliberately positioned to be shocking. An electric blanket beneath her had been set to the highest setting, degrading all biological evidence by the time she was found. Playing in her CD player was Schubert's Death and the Maiden. 1 week after the murder, one of Margaret's students returned to her car after a dog obedience class. A man was waiting in the back seat, holding pruning shears to her neck. He told her he would kill her the same way he had killed Margaret. Her dog lunged at him and bit him. She floored the accelerator and sped off. The dog managed to break free and catch up to the car. She stopped and let him in. The man was never found. Margaret's case went cold. No suspects, no leads. Nancy. 5 years later, in February 1991, it happened again. Nancy Ludwig was a 41-year-old flight attendant for Northwest Airlines, living in Minnesota. She and her husband Art had married in 1978 and by all accounts had a wonderful life together. On February 17, 1991, Nancy was called in to fly to Detroit for an overnight layover before a return flight. Northwest housed its crew at the Hilton Hotel near the airport. The hotel had a troubling arrangement. At the front desk, a sheet was left out listing the names of all Northwest employees, their flight numbers, arrival times, and room assignments. The keys were left out in the open alongside it, accessible to anyone who walked through the lobby. Earlier that same day, another flight attendant on a 5-hour layover had been running up and down the hotel stairwells to stay warm. On the third floor, she encountered a strange man with a duffel bag who frightened her enough that she went straight back to her room. A little later, 2 other flight attendants spotted the same man lurking near a vending machine, hiding his face, not purchasing anything. One of them looked through her peephole and watched him stop in front of another door, linger for a moment, then walk away. Nancy's flight landed at 8:45 p.m. On the shuttle from the terminal to the hotel, a man boarded and sat directly behind her, despite the entire bus being empty. At the hotel, Nancy took the elevator to the 3rd floor, said goodnight to a colleague, and agreed to meet her at 8 the next morning. Her room was 354, right next to the stairwell door. At 9 p.m., the guest in room 353 heard 2 screams from the hallway. He opened his door, looked out, saw nothing, and went back to watching television. At 10:30 p.m., a male flight attendant watching from his window saw a man in the parking lot. The man was carrying Northwest Airlines luggage, not rolling it, but carrying it tucked under his arms. The witness knew immediately that something was off. Flight attendants always roll their bags. The man's clothes were equally wrong. His pants were rolled up 5 inches at the cuff. He made 5 separate trips from the hotel to the far end of the parking lot, leaving his trunk open each time. It was 14 degrees outside. In the morning, Nancy never came to meet her colleague. At noon, the housekeeper opened room 354 despite the Do Not Disturb sign. The room was dark. The television was on. Nancy was on the bed. The room told a story of desperate struggle. Nancy had fought hard. She had defensive cuts on her hands so deep they went to the bone. The killer had moved her from one bed to the other, sheets and all. He had taken his time. He tortured her with a knife, carved a Z into her body, and nearly decapitated her with a sawing motion. A large athletic mouthguard had been forced between her jaws, too big for her mouth to close around. She had been raped while alive, and again after death. The killer then showered. Every piece of her clothing, all of her belongings, and her wedding ring were gone. The only thing left behind was a single button from her uniform. A forensic specialist wrote in his report, "The violence hung in the air. It shouted out at you." Nancy's husband, Art, fell into a blind rage and deep depression that lasted over 6 months. When he came out the other side, he made it his mission to keep his wife's case alive. Billboards, flyers, television appearances. But the case went cold all the same. Margaret's son, seeing the news reports about Nancy's death, immediately sensed a connection to his mother's murder. The Flint police dismissed him. He wrote a letter to Art. Art forwarded it to the Romulus Police Department, which served Detroit Metro Airport, and they took it seriously. But both cases still went nowhere. A new lead. In 2001, Michigan State Police formed a cold case unit and secured funding to revisit old investigations. Nancy's and Margaret's cases were among the first priorities. Detectives ran DNA from both cases through CODIS, the National DNA Database. Neither matched any known offender, but they matched each other. Both women had been killed by the same man. Whoever he was, he had never had his DNA collected in connection with any criminal case. In September 2001, the FBI finally launched a fully integrated national fingerprint database, AFIS, linking all 50 states into a single searchable system. The partial print from Margaret's bathroom sink was uploaded. On February 6, 2002, the FBI reported back they had a match. Jeffrey Wing Gordon. In 2002, he was 39 years old, married to Sandra, 2 children. The family attended church every Sunday. Jeff drove the kids to school each morning, picked them up from the bus, helped with their homework, cooked dinner, and kept the house clean. His wife said he had never once raised his voice at her and had sworn only a single time in their entire marriage. Police obtained his DNA covertly. A detective followed the family to a roller rink where they had gone for a school event. While Jeff was on the ice, the detective picked up his half-finished cup of Mountain Dew. Jeff noticed and told his wife, "Can you believe that guy just took my drink?" The DNA was a match. But to understand who Jeff really was, you have to go back. He was born in November 1962 and grew up in a large family in Michigan. In 1981, he met his first wife, Dawn, at a roller rink. She became pregnant and they married. Jeff joined the Navy and was assigned to the nuclear program in Orlando. In April 1983, a man began attacking women in parking lots across Orlando, grabbing them and tearing off their undergarments. Several women reported him. On May 6th of that year, Jeff dropped to his knees on a naval base and reached under the skirt of a woman walking past, ripping off her slip. The manager of the trailer park where Jeff and Dawn lived let himself in to fix a broken window while Jeff was away. Inside, he found bags of women's underwear, more than 100 items, panties, pantyhose, bras in all sizes. On the bed was his own daughter's underwear. Police were called. Jeff was arrested and confessed. "I know I did something wrong," he told them. "I want to get help. I just hope I get a chance to prove that I can change." The same night he received a less than honorable discharge from the Navy. While still out on bond, a neighbor saw a hand reaching through her window screen. She screamed. The man ran. Fingerprints matched Jeff. His bond was revoked. Dawn later shared several details with investigators. She once caught Jeff hiding women's underwear behind the wall paneling of their trailer. Another time, he was supposed to pick her up from work at 5 a.m. He never came. She walked home and found their baby locked in a closet. Jeff arrived shortly after and said he had been out for a jog. Jeff didn't jog. He was sentenced to 4.5 years, served 22 months, and was released on Christmas Eve, 1985. He returned to Michigan. In 1986, and the same year Margaret was murdered, Jeff began showing up daily at the home of his brother's neighbor, a woman named Tony. One day while she was out, he let himself inside, cleaned the house, did the laundry, folded everything, and left a note. Tony put a padlock on her door. She came home one afternoon to find it broken off. She moved. 2 weeks after Margaret's murder, Jeff met the woman who would become his second wife, Sandra. They bought a house in Flint in 1990. It later emerged that Jeff's family sprinkler business, where he worked every spring and summer, held the service contract for the Mott estate, the same estate where Margaret had lived. In 1993, a woman reported that Jeff had been stalking her, appearing outside her workplace and even showing up at her attorney's office. Jeff insisted it was coincidence. She dropped the charges. In 1995, a department store security camera caught Jeff quietly lifting women's skirts to look at their underwear while they were bent over shopping. He was arrested. When police searched his home, they found 833 items of women's underwear under his side of the bed, each one neatly labeled. By the time the full search was complete, the total haul exceeded 3,000 items, packed into 58 large cardboard boxes, 4 plastic storage bins, 3 suitcases, and 13 leaf bags. The labels read, Linda Halloween 96, Sandra's mom, Randy's wife, Cindy, Sandra's cousin, Citizens Bank backlot, clothesline, Sweetie from across the street. That neighbor's house went on the market shortly after. Among the items were underwear belonging to his nieces, his mother-in-law, and his sisters-in-law. When one of his brothers confronted him, Jeff replied, "I treated every woman equally." Co-workers at the sprinkler company had long referred to him behind his back as the panty sniffer. On work calls, he would fixate on women he spotted through the van window. Once driving 6 miles out of the way to follow a stranger, running stop signs, missing the job site entirely. His nephew, who worked with him one summer, called him Uncle Perv. Customer complaints about missing underwear and strange behavior in their homes came in regularly. Nothing was ever done. Police also found videos. Hidden camera footage of women in bathrooms. Zoom shots of a neighbor mowing her lawn in a bikini top. Clips taped off America's Funniest Home Videos. The ones where older women's skirts fall down. Family Christmas recordings where the camera drifted, methodically, to the women's bodies in the room. His children's gymnastics competitions. The camera lingering in ways it had no business lingering. A clip from a film in which a hijacker holds a gun to a female flight attendant's head. Home videos of his wife stepping out of the shower, not knowing the camera was on. In one edited montage assembled from different sources, a subtitle appeared on screen. "I killed 5 women." In August 2002, the trial for Nancy Ludwig's murder began. It lasted 4 days. On the 4th day, after the medical examiner described 45 separate injuries on Nancy's body, Jeff's court-appointed attorney visited him in his cell to prepare his testimony. Jeff snapped. He said he hated women. He said he had murdered many women, including the victim. He said he would gladly murder more if he ever had the chance. Then he told his attorney that the story he had given him about a friend named Clappinger committing the murder while Jeff showered was a lie. The attorney left the jail, stepped onto the sidewalk outside, and vomited. The next day, the defense rested without calling a single witness. Jeffrey Wing Gordon was found guilty of the murder of Nancy Ludwig and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In the case of Margaret E.B., he pleaded guilty without going to trial. From prison, he wrote letters to Sandra. He told her he had been asking God for forgiveness, studying the Bible, and was confident he was going to heaven. He wrote about the feminine side of his nature, more loving, more giving, and said that only a part of him had been held by the devil. The rest of him, he insisted, had loved her with everything he had. Before his arrest, Jeff had told investigators that he had killed many women. Only 2 have been officially confirmed. If you have any information about unsolved cases with a similar profile, a female victim, Michigan, a similar manner of death, contact the Michigan State Police. The case of Jeffrey Wing Gordon is closed. Others may not be.